Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us on location from the land down under Australia, we have Andrew Alexander. Andrew is the producer of the documentary Creating a Vegan World, where he interviews 50 leading experts in the vegan, animal rights, and plant-based health movements to discover what it takes to change the world. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed. Let's just cut to the chase, as they say in the film world. Is it possible to create a vegan world?
I'd say it's definitely possible. With that being said, it's a challenge because there's more than close to 8 billion people on the planet. And if you're like me, there's so many people around you that say it'll never change. But I feel it's possible, but it might come in ways we don't expect. So that's something I maybe talk about while I talk about my film later in the podcast.
We all know that things need to change, but how do we do that when so many people rely on animal agriculture and fishing for their livelihoods?
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest things that I just talk about in my documentary, because when you think of activism or changing people, you could think vegan foods coming out or activists in the streets, but it's really those systems we have in place which prevent a lot of people from changing. So during my documentary, I interviewed Emma Hurst. She's a member of parliament here in Sydney, Australia. Mm-hmm. And one of the things she said to me is that we have to focus on the jobs, because if there's an ordinary politician and they take away jobs, then they're not going to pass legislation that supports animal welfare, that helps ban factory farming, or even little things in between. So one of the things that I just talked about recently is there's an organization in Colorado called the Brave New Life Project, mm-hmm. where they help transition workers out of animal agriculture into jobs that are more humane, sustainable, and prosperous. So in that instance, a lot of these immigrants and undocumented workers or people without the right education, or maybe don't speak English, they're victims as well. They go into these slaughterhouses and they don't know what they're getting into, and they can't speak up about it, or else they'll lose their job. They might get deported from the country and things like that. And I think, I forgot if I said the statistics, 700,000 people in the US work in animal ag. And I think 1.3 billion people worldwide depend on the livestock industry for their livelihoods. And there's different systems level to solutions for it. In Canada, there's a law saying immigrants can't work in dangerous professions. So they're not allowed to work in strip clubs according to this law, but they are allowed to be put in slaughterhouses, which makes no sense. So there's an activist I spoke to there. He's working on adding animal agriculture to that law and creating systems changes to help solve that problem, as well as there's so many other problems we could solve in the vegan community.
When and how did you come up with the idea for your documentary?
I'd say, when was it? About 14 months ago, I just helped launch a vegan startup. I wanted to do my own thing. So my idea was I wanted to launch a vegan subscription box to get all natural sources of B12, calcium, vitamin D, iron, zinc, omega-3s, because I hate taking pills. A doctor just prescribed me medication for high triglycerides, high cholesterol, because I was on a junk food vegan diet for 3 years. So it was really passion for me to make sure people focus on their nutrition. So I started ordering all these different foods from wholesale, 6 different items in a subscription box. I put it together, and then the shipping costs were $23 each. The margins were not there. I was losing money every sale. And when I explained it to people, they're just like, we could take supplements, and wasn't really taking off the way I thought it was. Mm-hmm. But for that brand, I was starting a YouTube channel, and I had the idea, what if I film a documentary alongside this called Creating a Vegan World? So after months of just negative market feedback, I made up some mock movie posters and posted it in a Sydney Vegans Facebook group, and didn't get millions of views, but in that little community, it went more viral than anything I posted before. Hundreds of people commented saying, we like this one. People reached out saying, can you interview me in the film? Other people are like, hey, I'm a music producer. Can you put my vegan song in it? And I was getting dozens and dozens of emails. People want to contribute to it. And I was like, this is something that needs to be done right now. So that's what propelled it, and that's what got me into it.
I mean, I love that movie poster. It's fantastic. Where'd you come up with that?
There were 8 different movie posters that I put together. I found different images that I could license out and then put it together in Photoshop. And there's actually 2 of them that are on my Kickstarter page. One of them is about it's like the little plants being planted inside the light bulb.
Hmm.
That's the one that resonated with hundreds of people who saw it.
I love this idea of this movie because everybody talks about how veganism and plant based diets are great for everybody. But how do we go about actually making it happen? What have you found out?
So, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, like my perception of growing veganism would be Beyond Burgers and activism on the streets, like Cubes of Truth, protests, things like that.
Hmm.
But there's a huge system in place that number one, it keeps up animal agriculture industry. But on the flip side, we could use these same existing systems for our advantage. So, for example, if we need medical doctors that could prescribe plant-based diets to patients instead of not getting enough nutrition education in medical schools.
Hmm.
And so I spoke to Dr. Clapper, where instead of just helping people one on one, that could maybe help, let's say he works with 100 patients a year, that might help 100 people. But he's going to these medical schools, he's educating the next generation of doctors to be able to prescribe plant based diets instead of pills. So all of a sudden, when we shift this system, this is where the medical community is more empowered to help us talk about the benefits of a healthy plant-based diet for people who won't listen to the animal rights message. When I spoke to him, he said something interesting. On the final medical exams, I think I forget the name of them, but until there's more emphasis on nutrition, then the medical schools still struggle to take nutrition as seriously as they should. They're like, we want to teach this, but if it's not on the board exams, we have to teach this other stuff. So there's organizations helping shift the medical exams. And these types of systems changes span in all areas of society. I interviewed Mark Winstein. His company is Vegan Launch, where he supports the equity-based crowdfunding industry. So vegan businesses, they need money to grow, fulfill their mission, and create products that people enjoy that might help people transition. So the biggest problem with most vegan businesses is we don't have the funding we need to fulfill our mission with
Hmm.
angel investors, with venture capitalists. And these are people by law to invest in a startup early stage. You have to make $200,000 per year or have a net worth of over $1 million, excluding your primary residence. These are accredited investors. And this excludes most of the people from helping fund vegan startups. So
Mm.
by law, let's say I make 50,000 a year, $100,000 a year, I can't invest in early stage startups. But in 2012, President Obama signed the Jobs Act, which allows everyday individuals like you and I, we could invest $100 each in a startup through these equity-based crowdfunding platforms. For example, Vegan Fine Foods, they had a equity crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder, and I forget how many investors they have, it might be 1,000 or 2,000. All these people put maybe $100 each, and it adds up and helps that vegan business succeed. So this way, new financial laws and financial systems are helping transition. I think the numbers, us vegans have $3 trillion in stock markets, retirement accounts. And out of that, I think $2 trillion are from non-accredited investors. So all of a sudden, we could funnel an additional $2 trillion through impact investing into the vegan economy. So there's system changes like that. There's people getting plant-based meals into schools, hospitals, and all different things like that. So it's these systems level changes run by individuals that are helping us move the vegan movement faster than ever before.
What I love is some of these topics that you have here that you explore in creating a vegan world documentary. The economist who explains how to make vegan food cheaper than meat and reveals the unseen economic forces that drive our food system. Vegan politicians that share what it takes to pass animal friendly legislation in governments across the world. The vegan lobbying organization that's seeking to shift 38 billion in government subsidies away from factory farming and move it into sustainable agriculture. These are the topics that are important to make a vegan world possible.
Absolutely. And a lot of these things are things I didn't even know existed. And like one thing that I know nothing about is making a huge difference. In the United Kingdom, there is a man, he had a landmark case where he got fired because he was vegan. So something about the retirement account at his company, they were investing those dollars into unethical practices. So he spoke up for it about a year. He was really persistent and he lost his job for it.
Hmm.
So what he did is he went to the government in the UK and said he was discriminated against. So through his, I think it was like 1,000-page document, he presented a case to the government in the United Kingdom, and it pretty much concluded. A judge ruled that vegans are a protected class side by side, where you can't discriminate with someone in the US based on their religion. So in the UK, there's religion and then philosophical beliefs. So as ethical vegans, they are now protected in the same way religion is protected. Vegetarians, they lost their case because it's not based on a ethical, philosophical type of practice. But if you're an ethical vegan where you don't wear leather, you follow this, you're protected. So what that did is absolutely amazing. Where now I speak to nonprofits where they want to get plant-based and vegan meals into schools. So this way, vegan children have the option for a plant-based meal. You can't discriminate against those children because they're a protected class. If a prisoner in the UK, if they need vegan meals, you have to provide it to them because it's a protected class. So that one case is something I would never think of not coming from a legal background, and it's going to shift an entire system. And there's opportunities to do things like that. I think he's speaking to people in Italy and in Canada, United States. Those are little things that you never think about.
Yeah, that's something that's very surprising and interesting because it's a protected class.
Hmm.
What are some of the challenges that you've faced so far, and what have you done to overcome them?
Challenges for creating a vegan world or for the film specifically?
For the film specifically?
I'd say number one is I don't come from a videography background. And so when I started this, most of my interviews were conducted over Zoom. So I started finding freelance videographers. There's all behind the scenes of the film because the interviews I've done, it's just everybody's so receptive, providing great information, the storyline. But I know I have to raise money for specific camera gear to make sure it gets qualifies to be on the big screen or qualifies to be on Netflix or Amazon Prime. So financing, knowing the right camera gear, connecting with the right people behind the scenes who can make all this possible. I took on an associate producer from the film industry. Her name's Courtney Palm. She's a vegan actress. So she's helping me connect with producers of previous documentaries in the vegan world to help guide me on that sense. So, like I said, my background's entrepreneurship and marketing, where surrounding myself with the right people. I feel there's challenges, but everything's coming together great.
How long does it take to go from idea to actual documentary?
Great question. For me, it's probably longer than traditional videographers who have experience.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first 12 months, it was just kind of like, I don't want to say a side project, but just interviewing people on Zoom, working on the side, things like that. And then now, because I'm starting to raise funding, I'm able to be more professional and have everything I need to get this done. So my ambitious expectation is over the next year, but it could take plus or minus 3 months. I'm not sure. So I think if I've done this before and I started, I could have the film filmed within a year, maybe a couple months of post-production editing, and then going to film festivals, approaching distributors such as Netflix. That's I don't know that time frame after that. So it's longer than I anticipated, but it's fun.
What about distribution of the documentary? How do you plan to distribute it? Or do you have a plan?
I have my ambitious plan where I'd like to film it on Netflix approved camera gear, get the right quality and everything, approach it to them, and hopefully they accept it. But what I learned in the business world, things don't always go according to plan, and there's always wrenches thrown in the mix. So I spoke with someone a couple days ago where he's 30 years experience in the industry, and he said, yeah, Netflix can take it on. They might put it in some territories. They might put it in a lot. You could, in that case, you could also approach people like HBO or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime, get on those
Mm-hmm.
platforms. What he did is he went to all different film festivals. And when he went to the film festivals, there's distributors that watch those films and they might approach people there saying, hey, we love your film. We want to get it on our platform. Let's talk more.
Now, you seem to be in phase 3 of your timeline. where are you exactly in the process of making the documentary?
So right now, this week, I have all the interviews I need from Zoom. I'm piecing together like a rough draft of the film. So if I wanted to release something, I could do it pretty much by next week. But like I said, most of the Zoom interviews. So where I'm at, I had success in my Kickstarter campaign. I'm upgrading my camera gear, and I just want to make this the best thing possible. So within a couple of weeks, I'll be able to start filming more people in Australia, wrap up production in Australia in the upcoming months, and then over the summer, I'd go to the UK, Toronto, California, and a few places in the US and just refilm a bunch of people in person and then see if more interviews come in. So a little bit ahead of me, but at least that I know that I have the storyline together and I could release something just to get that information out there. I forgot speaking before the call where I have that together. I'm putting together a webinar based on my experience interviewing these like 50 leaders in the vegan movement, and I just want to at least get the information out there before the official film is released. So I'm setting up webinars on my website and just doing interviews like this to share the information.
You're using Kickstarter to help fund the project. How is that going?
It's great now. It finished the campaign 2 days ago, and I met my goal. So if you asked me 4 days ago, it'd be a different story. I think, when we first started talking last week, it was 3 days or 2 days before my campaign ended. And for people who don't know how Kickstarter works, you have to reach 100% of your funding goal or you collect nothing and you're back at square one. So I set my funding goal at $10,000. And then a couple days beforehand, it was at $3,000 of the goal. I had 2 days left. I'm like, how am I going to do this? And it's funny, I was speaking with someone a week earlier. I said, are you able to contribute 5,000, push me closer to the end of the campaign? And he said, I'm on vacation now. Let's speak on Saturday, which is the day before the campaign ends. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have this really big phone call on Saturday. This is going to make or break it. If he puts in 5,000, that'll get me close to my goal. I lined up about 3,000 from other people, so that would make it. Then Saturday morning comes, and he pretty much the vibe of the call was like, okay, these other documentaries, they filmed the full film first before putting it on, and you're still earlier in the stages, so that's probably why you didn't raise 100,000 yet. So my mind is like, okay, this isn't going the direction I want. At the end, he donated a good amount, not as much as I expected, but it's amazing how the universe works. As soon as that phone call ended, I got an email for a grant that I applied for, and they said, we'd like to offer a $5,000 matching grant to put towards your documentary.
That's
And
awesome.
it's literally the week before the campaign ended. I was on 30, 40 different phone calls, Zoom calls, just sorry for spamming my LinkedIn profile, my email news list, but just like everything I can to get the word out there. And behind the scenes, the connections I made were so much more valuable than just the money I raised on Kickstarter.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned while making the documentary?
The most surprising, I'd say, I think the topic I'd like to talk about is the lab grown meat industry. So I interviewed Paul Shapiro. He's the author of Clean Meat. So when I was planning out my film, it's like the final climax, the thing that'll make the billions of people who will never go vegan, people who love their meat, the cultural aspects, like they'll never do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I learned about lab grown meat where you could take cells and grow real meat in a lab through fermentation chambers, things like that, without slaughtering animals. And this way is like, wow, this is new technology. The market's really growing. Billions of dollars are being invested in it. And this is the thing that'll make billions of people go vegan without the animal slaughter. So I planned that out. I interviewed Paul. It seemed like an amazing thing. And then right after I did a previous podcast interview, someone approached me saying, you need to speak with this person. And this other person's an academic researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much they research this industry saying there's a lot of animal testing that involves slaughtering of animals. There's in order to turn cells into muscle tissue at massive scale. Imagine enough lab grown meat and like building muscles through like fermentation chambers to feed what 7.5 billion people if they never transition. There's so much energy use involved with that where there's an energy use issue there, and he has a whole list of research going against it. So I guess the biggest surprising thing is I don't know if surprising is the right word, but in the vegan movement, there's usually, we could all agree on one thing, a world where it makes a better place for animals, environment, humans, but there's always these polarizing issues where there's half the people, they're in favor of this, the other people are completely against it. And this carries over to other areas, such as, those disruptive activism events where I know someone where they charge presidential stages, they grab the microphone and speak about animal rights, cause a
Hmm.
scene. There's a group of vegans that say this is how we get attention. It opens up the door for conversation. But other vegans say no, they're destroying the movement. So the infighting within the vegan community, like that's the biggest thing that I'm trying to sort out in my mind right now. Where my personal opinion is have conversation open, admit that I could be wrong in my approach, and just move forward with what I'm doing. And hopefully, even if I disagree with someone, they might be right. And admitting that to myself is the biggest thing. But I don't have the answer. That's just my personal opinion.
Why do you think it is that the vegan movement fights so much within itself?
Definitely comes down to deeply rooted beliefs and maybe fear that what the other people are doing will destroy all that we're working for. So I'd say it comes down to fear. And then there's cases where people, they might be the best expert in one area. They might know for certain that something's right and effective, and it just challenges their status quo. So wish I could have a more psychological answer, but that's the best that could come out.
I think about that and I'm like, if we were all on the same page, because we all are on the same team, basically, and we're just infighting. And
Hmm.
that kind of detracts from a lot of the progress that we can make. And it just seems like if we could just get everybody pointed in the right direction, then that would work. But I mean, there's a lot of different factions and a lot of different people trying to do everything the same way to get the same result, but in a different way.
Yeah, it might be easier if we think about it at like a more micro level because I've been part of startups in the past, startup companies.
Hmm.
And let's say it's a vegan startup company where the mission is to get healthy plant-based meals in the hands of millions of people. Within the company, there might be infighting saying, no, we should really do social media marketing. This is people like influencers on Instagram could promote it, things go viral. Whereas someone else on the team might say, no, we should do paid advertisements. This is a way to scale to billions of impressions per day. And then there might be infighting about the different strategies to get there and different approaches.
Hmm.
But maybe if we just, like you said, realign and just realize we're both working towards the same goal, admit that you might be wrong. Or at the same time, what if, like that example of the vegan company, okay, how about we set up a small team? We might get a volunteer intern. We'll really focus 20% of our time on social media marketing. Then the rest of the marketing time can go towards the paid advertising. This way, both solutions could work. But I think for me, it always involves asking myself, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're right. Have an open mind and find out the reasoning behind what they're doing. Like, for example, the example of the activist charging a presidential stage and grabbing a microphone.
Hmm.
In my opinion, I have no basis for that, but it just feels wrong. But I'm more of a non-confrontational type of person.
Right.
So instead of just resisting it, saying, wow, they're causing a scene, they're giving vegans a bad name, I'd like to speak with them, say, hey, like, what's your reasoning behind it? What's the research behind it? What's your experience? And like, maybe I could learn something from them. Maybe they have something I don't know about, or maybe my input talking to them, they might be able to do the same exact thing, but in a slightly different way, which is 100 times more effective. So just like you said, realize we're in the same fight together, have an open mind and have these conversations at least.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. What do you see as the greatest challenge for this project at this point?
Greatest challenge for me personally, it's financing. I'm speaking with people where like you work in audio editing, like post production editing, like all these costs coming up that I didn't know about. So
Mm.
it's balancing fundraising mode, filming mode, story mode, social media awareness mode. I'm bringing on more people involved to help, at least in that sense. But I know fundraising is the biggest challenge, but I'm confident the vegan community is great and has been supportive. And I say the biggest challenge for, I guess, the project as a whole, just creating a vegan world is about the billions of people that are like clinging on to their meat diets and that whole solution about the lab grown meat industry. How do we shift behavior of billions of people when it's deeply rooted in their cultural norms, the way that things have been done in the past, and things along those lines. So the biggest challenge is creating a world with 8 billion vegans in it.
How and when did you transition to a plant-based diet?
That story begins actually 2014. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. I built an internet business. I had dreams of earning passive income on the internet, traveling the world, and just living my personal dream lifestyle. So in 2014, that dream became a reality after years of hard work. I left Phoenix. I moved to Boulder, Colorado. And the roommate I moved in with for the first month, he was vegan. And I was in the mindset of, oh, my meat is grass fed, so it's good. And he's like, oh, they feed grass to the animals before they kill them.
Mm.
And in my non vegan mind, like that made no sense. I was like, no, it's healthier. What are you talking about? Went to a few vegan meetups. It didn't stick with me back then. 2016, 2017, after traveling some more, I went back to Boulder. And I just reached the point where like I backpacked through Europe, I traveled, I had all my personal like selfish desires. To be honest, most of them were fulfilled and I just reached a sense of like either boredom or missing some type of purpose in life and I just wanted to do something beyond myself. At that point I was really big into personal development, spirituality, helping people overcome habits, and I really wanted to grow that. But then I went to a vegan potluck and I just saw that the activism community in Boulder was growing since I was there a couple years ago. I was like, wow, there's really something about veganism that's growing, and I was interested in learning more. Just think initially, how could I apply to change the world for something I was passionate about outside of veganism? But then I got welcomed into the community. I didn't know many people in the city. Then every Saturday went to a vegan potluck. They started telling me to watch the documentaries, inviting me out to activism events, going hiking together. And honestly, for me, it was that sense of community and like belonging and just that type of social aspect that pulled me in. And then watching the documentaries about the horrific animal slaughter and like what actually goes on inside slaughterhouses behind the quote unquote food system, just those images stuck with me. And I haven't been the healthiest vegan throughout my whole journey, but from the ethical perspective, that's like the glue that locked it in. And I've been vegan for 4 years since.
What documentary and what was the trigger that really made you go vegan? And did you go vegan all at once?
Yeah, as you know from my story I just told from 2014, 2016, I just kind of more flexitarian because I didn't really see the truth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it was in November 2017. I woke up one day realizing I didn't eat meat for 3 weeks. I didn't have dairy for 3 weeks. Like I've been vegan for 3 weeks, and like I woke up one day and just like feeling disgusting towards meat. Like I don't know if there's like one trigger moment. It's like a compilation of things, and just kind of like I transitioned to a new reality or a new paradigm where that level of like disgust built up inside of me was just there. It's maybe I don't know. I can't name a specific documentary. It's like a collection of things.
So it was kind of like you were watching, you're hanging out with people having these potlucks, and then slowly over time, you changed to becoming vegan, but there wasn't one specific instance that made you go vegan.
Correct. And I could explain this two ways. Like I said, I did spiritual coaching before this. The message doesn't resonate with a lot of people, but like the energy, like you give off the vibes, like you kind of like assimilate to the people around you and just kind of like transform into them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more practical way of saying it is like peer pressure. Like you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
Because 10,000 years ago, like when we lived in cave villages of like 150 people or less, you have to assimilate to the culture or else you'll get kicked out of the tribe and banished to the wilderness and you'd probably die. Or you have to blend into the wilderness or like a tiger could come and eat you. So I think those personality traits are like built into our DNA as like a human instinct for survival. So in
Mm-hmm.
my sense, when I spent enough time in the activist vegan community in Boulder, Colorado, it's unconsciously, it just naturally happened. So maybe just the more you spend time with the people you want to be like, if you're trying to consciously make the change, that makes it the most effortless, in my opinion.
What positive changes did you see both mentally and physically?
Physically, I know since I turned vegan, I like I said, I still ate like fried potatoes, the vegan processed meats, the vegan junk food. Like you don't have to give up taste if you're going vegan.
Hmm.
But I noticed I could eat more and still not put on weight as fast as if I was on a standard American diet. So especially now that I'm more whole foods plant-based, I'd say I'm 80% there. Like I could eat more and just like fill myself up and just not gain weight like I used to in the past. I used to be 50 pounds overweight. Now I'm just pretty much like the ideal weight level. So physically that's been a positive. I feel better, obviously. The mental side of things, just I feel more like consciously aware of different things in the world, like being compassionate towards animals and viewing them as living beings. Like that wasn't part of my paradigm before going vegan. So with that kind of like poking the hole in the veil of like reality, it's like seeing the other side. That actually allows me to open up and have the same type of perception about other things that maybe didn't resonate with me in the past and just hopefully be a more positive person.
Did you struggle with anything when you first became plant-based? Like traveling for work or eating out with friends or parents or anything like that?
When I first transitioned, it was easy because all my friends were vegan. Then, about 6 months later, I had an opportunity to do work in Peru. So I flew to Lima, Peru, in South America to work out of a vegan startup accelerator.
Hmm.
And then in the house, that's when the whole food plant based, the natural foods, none of the processed boxed factory meals. Like um, at home, it was easy to be part of that healthy vegan community, if I say. But then when I went out and I made friends who were not vegan, going to the restaurants in a foreign country where chicken restaurants, ceviche, which is fish restaurants, like that's predominantly the culture there. So I found myself eating lots of French fries and salad, as
Mm.
probably most vegans are accustomed to back in the day. But yeah, like being around other people, like now I'm in Australia and everyone around me is not vegan. So when I go to like a dinner party and they're cooking meat, I'm just like, okay, just throw me the bowl of pasta, put some olive oil on it, sprinkle some, like throw some mushrooms in. And just the hardest part is getting the right dishes when I'm around people who are not vegan.
Where did you get the courage to start your project, your film, your documentary?
Courage, that's an interesting word. I guess I told you I come from an entrepreneur background. So before transitioning to veganism, I transitioned from like 9 to 5 employee mindset to get the courage to start my own business. Where back then, 2012, before going vegan, I was broke, unemployed, living in my parents' retirement home in North Carolina, just hit like a rock bottom in life.
Hmm.
And then I found a millionaire entrepreneur on the internet. He's from Phoenix, Arizona. I knew he was legitimate because I friended him on Facebook, not one of those like get rich quick opportunity scam you type of things.
Hmm.
But he said, "Hey, if you're ever in Scottsdale, let's grab lunch and I could kind of help you on your journey to entrepreneurship." So with $250 to my name, I drove across the country 2,000 miles from North Carolina to Scottsdale to have lunch with this millionaire. Funny story, I maxed out my credit card on the way over there. I gambled my last $250 in an Indian casino playing poker. I I actually turned that into $2,000. That was enough to get me started. I got a customer service job, but when I met the millionaire, his first piece of advice was stop gambling at the casino, Andrew, and get a job, get yourself on your feet, and then build the business on the side. Then after 2 years of struggling with that, I started to get my business off the ground. I was making more money from there than I was from my day job. And that's when I made the really courageous decision to quit the security of the corporate job that kept me stable for all those years and go out on my own. So I quit the job. I moved to Boulder. I faced a lot of struggles as an entrepreneur. I ran out of money when I was backpacking through Europe. That was a quite interesting experience.
Mm.
But after going through all of that, just I know maybe there's experience from knowing I could succeed from past ventures, but also kind of like trust in the process that this, I know people support it, I support it, the vegan community supports it, the world supports it. I don't really feel courageous by doing it, just something I feel like it's meant to be done.
I feel it's courageous when you quit your job and you take that leap. I've done that. I know what that takes and what that feels like. You have that pit in your stomach where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to go for it. That takes courage. That takes some fortitude in order to try and leave that security behind.
Absolutely. And in my instance, it took like I had a mentor. He's made tens of millions of dollars over the years in the entrepreneurship sense, but he was there behind me. He's for 6 months straight. He's like, Andrew, quit your job, take the leap. I'm like, I'm making no money. I can't afford this. He's like, once you do it, you'll figure things out. And even after I was like financially secure for my own venture, he still kept pushing me, pushing me, pushing me. My friends are pushing me, and like with that help and support, that's like the analogy of like the house being on fire, like behind me, and like the open door where I was forced to run out. So thank you for giving me the credit and saying courageous, but I feel more like the universe or circumstances definitely helped that decision.
What is it about filmmaking that makes you so passionate?
I'd say the storytelling, because we all have messages that we want to communicate with the world, whatever it is. And I've done it through writing books before, but like the ability to tell stories through video in a way that appeals to people, I just find that interesting. I just view it kind of like putting a puzzle together. So you looked at my the trailer for my documentary, the first version I put together, where it's just
Mm-hmm.
piecing together the interview footages, having a coherent story, making sure it's something that's emotionally impactful, choosing the right background music, the right clips to go over it, just the puzzleness, if that's a word, of putting the pieces together. Like it just, I find it fun. I find it interesting, and the attention to detail is something that just I like.
What is one habit, hack, or tip that helps you stay on track with your plant-based diet?
I'd say if we say to stay on track with a vegan diet, it is watch the documentaries and the films showing what happens in the slaughterhouses and the animal slaughter, and just really, I don't want to say you have to see that gruesome footage, but when you see that, that locks you in, and it, in my opinion, you don't go back from that. So understanding about the animals coming first, or having something beyond yourself, it's more than just a diet. It's something else. Like I said, I tried a whole food plant-based diet after going vegan, which for people listening who don't know the difference, veganism is about not harming animals. Whole food plant-based, you cut out processed things like Beyond Burgers or fatty food or fatty junk foods, processed foods, sometimes oil, where it's the healthier version of it. And even with that, I keep slipping back and forth because maybe in my opinion, it's not something beyond myself. When veganism is speaking, it's for the animals, it's beyond myself, and it's that's why I think that's something I stuck with 100% as opposed to traditional diets.
Is there a book or cookbook that you've gifted most to someone transitioning to a plant-based diet?
I don't think I've gifted any books or recommend any books. I'm more of a YouTube type of person. So just doing the research, maybe watch Dr. Greger, was it nutritionfacts.org? A lot of people told me to like watch his videos, watch videos by Dr. Clapper, Dr. Esselstyn, if you're into the health side of things. Just follow that right there, and just those videos could inform you about health. I don't know if cookbook's the best example because 90% of my cooking is just stir fries. It's just easy. I just throw rice or pasta into a frying pan with a bunch of vegetables. And I'm not the best cook in the world, so I can't recommend a cookbook.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Interesting. For some reason the word alone comes to mind, and I don't know if it's a one word, but like part of something or belonging afterwards. Where I guess before veganism, like I wasn't part of that tightly knit community, but now I am, which is kind of ironic because a lot of people transitioning to veganism, they say they feel secluded at the dinner tables. But if you're part of the right communities, like, yeah, you're part of something.
It's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to follow you on Instagram, the web, social media in general?
If you are vegan and you're interested in creating systems level changes and supporting creating a vegan world documentary, I have the website veganworldfilm.com. Right now I'm putting up a webinar summarizing what I learned from the 50 people I interviewed. So veganworldfilm.com is the website. If you're not vegan, there's some videos about plant-based health on my YouTube channel called Creating a Vegan World. So you can search on YouTube for Creating a Vegan World. But veganworldfilm.com is the best place to go for everything.
Thanks again, Andrew, for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.